What's up, alumni? Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele. This week on After 4, we are hanging out with Erica Young Reitz, one of the leading experts on the post-graduation transition. In fact, Erica literally wrote the book on it back in 2016 with her IVP title, After College, Navigating Transitions, Relationships, and Faith. I got to hang out with Erica in the early days of After 4 to learn about her book, and she's returning today to share some of her updated learning on Gen Z's post-graduation experience and to tell us about the 2025 revision of After College. Erica is an exceptional resource, and I'm so excited to reintroduce her to the After 4 community. So here's Erica, and this one's for you, alumni. Erica, welcome back to the podcast.
John, thanks so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this. Thank you.
Yes, me too. We chatted a few years ago now at this point, which seems almost impossible that it's been that long. It's gone so quickly. That conversation felt like such a valuable resource and just a lot of fun to do, that when I heard that there was some new work being done with After College, I was like, Erica, you got to come hang out with me again. So I'm really glad that this is happening.
Well, that was the easiest yes I could have said. I had such a great time last time. And John, for your listeners, I just love what you are up to. This is a resource that is needed. And if someone's just tuning in for the first time, I hope they continue to track with this podcast because I love what you're up to.
Oh, thank you, Erica. The feeling is very mutual. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. Your book, After College, was super helpful for me when I was a campus staff and helping some of our seniors prep for transition. And honestly, there were things that I was reading even several years after my undergrad and grad graduations that I was like, this is still helping me right now as I'm still processing through some of these transitional things that have been happening. So I love After College. And we'll get into that a little bit more in just a little bit here. Erica, before we jump the gun any further, would you just give us a little bit of an introduction, help our listeners and our viewers get to know you?
Thank you. I'm Erica Young Reitz, and I live in State College area, Pennsylvania, married to my husband, Craig, and we have two younger children, 10 and 12, and a fierce mini schnauzer named Boaz.
That's awesome.
I'm the founder of After College Transition, which is committed to equipping recent grads with the tools they need to thrive, and especially focused on those who work with recent grads, putting those proven tools in their hands. And I also work part-time for a leadership development company called Bartel & Bartel. I serve there as a leadership development specialist, getting to put all my good training into work in the lives of our clients, which is really fun work.
That's really awesome.
Yes, I love it. It's so fun. And my undergrad is Messiah University, was Messiah College at the time. And then I went on to do my master's at Geneva College, my master's in higher ed. And when I was writing that master's thesis, I put the focus on that senior year transition. And that was really the fuel for the first book, for the After College book that came out in 2016, getting to talk to lots of alumni. And I was really asking the question, does intervention in the senior year make a difference for post-college thriving? And it was a resounding yes. And so that was encouraging and continued to inspire me to keep working in this area. As you may know, John, I kind of borrowing from that career counselor, Mark Savickas, we seek to actively master what we passively suffered. So for your listeners, probably one thing I just want them to know is I'm not just some talking head on transitions. I'm a real person who's gone through real transitions, and mine was not the smoothest. And so the reason I wrote After College was I want this to be the book I wish I had when I left college. Even though I had a great college experience and a good head on my shoulders, that transition rocked me in ways I just wasn't prepared for.
Yes. Oh, Erica, I can so identify with that. The move to much farther away from home, much farther away from the community that you had developed, just into even just like navigating a new town can really throw you off. And the better that we can prepare for that so that it doesn't feel like such a shock, we are all the better for it. And so I'm so excited that you're here to help some of our alumni do that, to provide us with a really good tried and true resource that's being updated and contextualized for them in this season. And that's so great. We've already mentioned After College a few different times here. As you said, the original came out in 2016, and now just this year, like in the last month or so, as of this recording.
February 18th was the release date, so it is in the wild now, and
that's awesome.
Really an exciting season. Yeah, that's
great. Well, can you just give us a brief introduction? We'll take some deeper dives here, but give us a brief introduction to the newest edition of After College.
Yeah, I met with someone from an acquisitions editor from InterVarsity Press. The InterVarsity Press is the publishing house for the book. And remember talking through a number of different possible next projects. And then it sort of came up of like, do you want to update this? After College came out in 2016. As we all know, our world has changed dramatically in a short time. It's probably felt like even dramatic changes sweeping in such a short time. And our students have changed. It's a different group of students exiting. And so for those of you who are leaving or you've maybe already graduated, you know that what you're experiencing even feels different than your millennial counterparts. And so that was a big reason why we said, hey, could we focus on this as the next project? And I was thrilled. I thought it was an excellent idea. I was teaching at Penn State at the time, teaching advanced writing. I had seniors in my classroom who we were actively talking through some of the unique challenges that Gen Z individuals were facing. And so I was thrilled to jump into a project uniquely focused on updating for Gen Z audience.
Nice. Yeah, that's really great, because I was even thinking about, 2016, that would have released when like there were Gen Z, like early Gen Z students who were in college, but I would imagine that most of your research was really based on like later millennial experiences. Sure. And then and as you said, there's been a lot of change since then, even from like early Gen Z to just late Gen Z, like part of the same generation, but wow, just very different life experiences, especially since COVID. And so much has changed. Well, so then help us put some words to that as you were doing your research, as you've been having these interviews with students that you've been like working directly with, not just like sort of nameless, fill in some answers for like, but people that you know and can share very deeply with you. That's super exciting. What are some of the things you're learning about what's unique about Gen Z's experience with the transition to life after graduation?
Yeah, I mean, in a sweeping way, John, I think I'm really appreciative that you mentioned the pandemic. Like we are this post-pandemic moment, and how has that shaped even those individuals who were, in school 5 years ago and now they're graduating? I think we're, even the racial reckoning that we've been through as a nation post George Floyd's death, conversations around sexuality and gender, even students who are saying things like, hey, as we become, and whether we agree or disagree with this, like a more post-Christian environment, students are saying things like it's becoming more and more difficult, like to put one foot in front of the other for faithfulness when we've normalized ways of doing things that are just not God's best. And so how do I keep, and another person pointed out, if each one of the topic areas of, the first After College book addressed, each chapter was organized by, this is a topic area that you're going to face post-college. And the same is true for the new edition. If each one of these were an issue for those graduating when I wrote it the last time, these are even more magnified right now. Wow. So you take a topic like decision making, the current generation, and your listeners can speak to whether this rings true for them or not, but just the new anxieties around that, the pressure, even with just the rise of technology and so many of us caught up in this like perfectionism, the pressures that we feel from outside of us, from our parents, from ourselves. I think many of these areas are more magnified. And so I hope that in the book, you're hearing a voice from me that's like, I just want to come alongside you, help you take a deep breath. We can navigate these things together. And there's so much good on the other side.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you even just focusing in on something like decision making. And I think about, my generation, we had the sort of like the FOMO, the fear of missing out. And so we might say yes to way too many things because like, well, I don't want to miss what could happen there, as opposed to what I've heard called FOBO, the fear of better options.
Oh, and that's interesting.
Yeah, and maybe some of Gen Z and their counterparts saying like, I'm going to hold off on giving a response to something or making a decision because I want to wait until I know exactly what all of my options are. I want to pick the very best one. So there's like interesting level of discernment in that happens, but also like people like me that are like, could you just give me an answer so we can move?
That's
forward
right. No, that's right.
How we want to do this.
Yes, I even changed something in the chapter to address an indecision is a decision in many ways. And so what does it look like to even just pursue faithfulness on that plan, that social plan I did make? And, other thing raging is just our value of personal freedom and autonomy and how much that has just been ingrained in our imaginations of the best life is the one that I'm at the center and the heart of all the decisions. If I can make what's best for me. And so, I have not heard FOBO. I heard more the JOMO, the joy of missing out that can also affect us. And on one hand, John, I love that this generation is asking better questions in terms of, what is a balanced life? And is there a joy in missing out that actually gives life? Yes. And on the other extreme of that is, to your great point about, are we just waiting for that next better option? Or are we just paralyzed by some of our social anxiety, our fear of even saying yes? I think that's crippling us sometimes, of just kind of the perpetual no that can get us, into just that category of now, we are the most antisocial century. That's unique to our students graduating right now. It's just a friend sent me a podcast with a gentleman, Derek Thompson, plain English, who was interviewing Nick Epley, a sociologist at the University of Chicago. He was doing these studies prior to, but we have just, social life is strewn with expectation gaps in terms of people who think everyone wants to be left alone. And so we sit and we scroll but really we're desperate for connection. And so I think that's a unique thing that this generation is contending with in terms of finding friends and relationships post-college.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think about my time in college. That was like the beginning of something like Facebook, which was made to create connections with people on campus specifically and to develop some of those friendships and get to know people. And now we have just this inundation of ways to connect, which actually just makes it even harder to connect because there's just too many things coming at us, too many invitations friend requests and profile, all of that stuff. And it can just feel really crippling, which is crazy because we do long for connection. And yet we have so many invites to connect that it just can feel overwhelming. And we don't actually know which ones to say yes to. And that feels different to me now than it did when I was in school, which granted, for our listeners, probably feels like it was a million years ago when I was in college. But, Same. But yeah, so it's interesting to me then that you said so many of the topics that you touch on, it's not even necessarily, I'm sure that there are things that are unique, but that it's all of these are just all the more important. They have become magnified. And so it's not necessarily I had to sift through some of the content. It was no, I need to make it even more clear. This is a big deal. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. Erica, is there an element of transition that seems in the interviews that you've done, the conversations that you've had, because transition isn't just this scary, always hard, there are exciting and fun things about it too. Are there elements of transition that you've noticed with Gen Z that they seem to have an easier time with, or they tend to have a better outlook on?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, John. And I was thinking about, I lived in China for a summer when I was an undergrad, and I would describe China as a nation in paradox, right? There's this is going on, a both and on many different aspects of culture. Okay. This thing is progressing forward. This thing feels like we're mowing the lawn with this device. There was a lot of both and I think Gen Z represents that too. I think of them as tensions within them that are unique. So for example, they've been called anxious and depressed. And I'm absolutely seeing those themes in the students that I work with. And at the same time, they do have a positive outlook on things. They do have a hope for the future and they're optimistic. They believe in themselves. I remember asking my students, what are the greatest flaws of your generation? What are your superpowers? And it was so fun to see what emerged from that. I do believe that post-pandemic, in many ways, they are more resilient. They have figured out how to deal with disappointment and their agility, and they can run faster and better because they've learned how to deal with things like that. Now, one group of researchers who have been interested in at Pepperdine says they may need help identifying those resiliency skills, that they're there, but we can come alongside and help name them. And if you're a Gen Z listener on this call, probably one of the greatest acts of resiliency you can pursue is just sharing your story, sharing if you've hit bumps along the way, to talk about that. I believe Gen Z individuals are absolutely resilient. We just need to help keep uncovering what are those skills that we did learn in the pandemic. I think of this audience as incredibly imaginative and innovative, and even just from the ways they're brilliant at like thrifting and figuring out, like, I have this budget, I'm going to make this thing happen. I love that about Gen Z. And so I'm very, you'll read in the book, I am very pro Gen Z. I see your superpowers. If those listening on the call, if you've been inundated by messages of like, oh, your generation, I'm not about that. And I think there's in many of those things, we have to look and say, what are some of the challenges of this? So on the one hand, we're very much, Gen Z individuals aware of mental health issues, advocating for a better work-life balance. Where does that bleed into problematic aspect of like, oh, I'm just going to work my wage, which that so we can it can bleed into critiques if we run the thread fully through. And so we just want to be mindful of in this good thing, where could it get twisted into, okay, I want to work is just a hobby. And so don't ask anything more of me after 5 o'clock. That's it's interesting that you bring up work. That's a place I've gotten to have a few different conversations around, money and Gen Z and some of the like FIRE mentality, the financial independence, retire early. Some of that, and like as you said, some of the innovation that requires, the ability to sort of to live a different lifestyle a lot of times than what our culture would recommend, of like, man, it's your money, you earned it, treat yourself. And that so much of Gen Z is like, I'm going to be more thoughtful about the way that I spend my money. 100%.
But then at the same time, like, is there something coming alongside that is there a depreciated value for work and just I want to try the right way to say that, not necessarily a depreciated value, but a perspective that's different of like, work is like a gift that God gave us. There is dignity to be found in work. There is elements of calling that we get to experience. And sometimes it's just good for us to have some weight of work.
Yes,
like a heavy duty truck works best when it's got a load in its trailer, like in the bed of the truck. And sometimes we're the same way. Like you need some work in there to keep you balanced. And also, like, there's something about the monotony of work that brings joy to the other parts of our life. It adds a little perspective as well. And so it's just interesting to me that you talk, like, just some of those, like, there are two sides to this coin for every one of these conversations of like, the superpowers that they bring, but also Gen Z, some of the hangups that you might find that come right along with those superpowers.
Very well said. And we do see that, like you said, in the world of work. And I think it's for each individual to evaluate for themselves. While I work with a lot of leaders with my company, we talk about just motivation, like what's motivating, even the FIRE movement, like what's motivating this? If I'm ruthlessly honest about why I'm going after this, and that could be said for some individual, hey, I'm doing the side hustle because this is faithfulness. This is allowing me to pay off student loans. For others, it's like because I'm chasing a lifestyle or the temptation to coast. Some of us may need to be reacquainted with the beauty and value of work. God created work good even before the fall. We are made to work. Going to work is an act of worship.
Yes.
And so we may need to be reinvigorated with a deeply biblical view of work, that it is God's good gift to us. And on the other hand, maybe we've gotten caught up in the, as Michaela O'Donnell calls it, the always on demand, hustle. We're never resting culture and the pressures and the perfectionism that have cost us Sabbath keeping. And so there's, like you said, tensions within all of that.
Yes. And that's the case for every generation. Like every generation brings its superpowers and has its hangups. Like Gen Z, that's not just a critique on you as you're listening in here. Like the millennials, we had this sort of superhero mentality of like, I'm going to change the world. Like not just my generation, but me, John, I'm going to change the world. I'm the new sheriff in town. I'm going to clean up this joint. And then, like, which is, born out of a desire to see, like, I think, to see God's goodness and shalom happening in the world, but also like an over the top sense of self-importance.
No, it's absolutely right.
Yeah, that I need God to like rework in me. So yeah, all of that to say, Gen Z, you're not alone in having A, superpowers, and B, hangups that come right along with them.
Absolutely. And John, to your point, that's actually some conversation that my editor and I had as I was processing, was like, millennials very much had that, like, let's get out there and change the world, where Gen Z individuals, I think, many of you listening, you're good at kind of looking inward and saying, like, there's some stuff I've got to deal with within me before I get out there. And so on the one hand, I think you've got a leg up on, let's just say you get married post college, and, where my generation and others, we were working through all our mess, throughout our 20s, because we didn't do enough of that inner looking. The danger is when, we're doing so much inner looking, we've stopped kind of looking outward, and it's paralyzing us of like, okay, I just keep, kind of being too self-absorbed. That's where it can become problematic. But I think there's so much excitement too in your, like, many of you have been brave enough to seek out counseling and things that have moved you closer to health, and your future self will thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Erica, if there were just like a couple of things from your book that you could highlight, if you could only give our Gen Z listeners a heads up about one or two facets of transition, and let this be something that also whets our appetite for, like, I want to read more. Okay. But are there a couple of facets about transition that are a bit more challenging, that you would really want our Gen Z listeners to be prepared for?
Yeah, John, one is in chapter 2, I go through just what is it like to go through a transition. Our culture talks a lot about change, like hope and change, and we're excited about change. And then we don't talk about what's going on psychologically when we go through that change. Yeah. And so I would love for listeners to pick up the book and just help normalize some of the grieving, the middle kind of neutral zone we go through of like, this feels fallow and empty. And now I have a name for it. And then the new beginning. And so just what is it like to go through a transitional time from a psychological perspective, which isn't necessarily unique to a generation, but I did put things in there that I think will help. And even some of those superpowers of like Gen Z's ability to imagine, like that will help. Anytime we have a picture of where we're moving towards, like that is going to help us in the transition. Probably the other area, John, is just, I was with a group of seniors over the weekend. I was at CCO's Jubilee conference. I did some workshops, but then I also had a really fun luncheon with just seniors who were going through the after college experience curriculum together on their campuses. And probably the topic that came up the most over lunch, I was reflecting on this, is just, it's about relationships, family, friendships, navigating that community post-college. And I've been at this for a long time, and that issue, anecdotally, is the number one issue. And you think about when you leave, college campus, friends are just a walk across the quad. And now, as you mentioned earlier, sometimes we're scattered all over the nation. Yep. How do you build and find community post-college? That's something I'm passionate about talking about, especially in an antisocial century.
Yes, that's really interesting. I got to do a few interviews, very short interviews, a month or two ago. And I think almost every person that I asked, these were like, have graduated in the last year or two. When I said, what's been the most challenging part of transitioning away from your campus ministry, because it was all InterVarsity students. And they said 90% of them, I think, said it's the relationships, trying to figure out where my relationships are coming from next, and missing that connection with people that I trust and that have been kind of my bumpers for like testing out ideas and problems that I've had and big theological questions that I have, or just somebody to sit down and have lunch with. Like not even to talk about anything important, but just to be with someone.
Embodied, not just through social or something. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I would agree. My limited research, but the anecdotal research that I've done as well would suggest the same thing, that has been challenging. And for our listeners, I'll say, a year ago, right around this time, we did a whole series that was on the relationship transition. And so like ending well on campus, making new friends. I'll throw a link in the show notes so that people can take a look at that as well. But your chapter 2 that you mentioned, is a lot of that based on William Bridges and his work with transition?
Yes,
okay.
yes, absolutely. So if you heard notes of that, where he talks about the cycles of transition, ending, neutral zone, new beginning, yes, I give him full credit in the chapter.
That's awesome.
And then sort of think about, what does this mean from a faith perspective, and how do we wait well? How do we not over imagine a future that doesn't exist, and look back with eyes that are not accurate in terms of just rose-colored glasses on our previous experience? And so all of those things helping make sense of the real moment we're really living, and the importance of doing that heart work. I mean, I do believe God does some of his best heart work in us during transitional times, but to be able to name what's going on and show up to it well, that's what the chapter is trying to give tools for.
Yeah. I have really appreciated the little bit of introduction that I've gotten to that model as well. As I think you already mentioned, just being able to give like a category for the part of experience that you're in. Like, I'm still on campus, so I'm not done, but I am ending. And so how do I end well? And how do I think about ending well? And is there some research that I can do and preparation I can do for this next phase? Because once you hit that neutral zone, like, you're sort of just you're in the middle of nowhere is what it feels like for a lot of the time. And like, okay, but if you can identify that, like, this is a normal part, I'm in the middle and it's okay. I'm still reaching back. I'm still looking ahead. And none of that has come to fruition yet, but and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second. I'm starting to figure this out. I wonder if I've started to reach the new beginning here.
Yeah.
And, there's a quote that is misattributed to C.S. Lewis, and I know I'm not going to get it just right. But it is something about, like, isn't it amazing how every day can seem the same, but then you look back and realize that everything has changed. And that is like such an indicator of what it feels like to be in that new beginning, where you're like, oh, I'm still just going to work every day. I'm still just like driving the same streets every day. But then when you take stock, you're like, wait, but I know how to get where I'm supposed to go without using GPS.
It's so good, John.
And when I go to work, I have conversations with my coworkers that aren't just about the projects that we're doing.
Or like, even just about all the questions I have. Someone actually asked me a question.
Yeah, exactly. That those are indicators that you have started taking steps out of the neutral zone and into a new beginning right there. And that for each one of those things, it's like, okay, we don't do a good job of this in our culture. Like, you need to celebrate those moments when you recognize something like, oh, this is part of something new and something good. I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to call a friend, or I'm actually just going to treat myself to dinner tonight. Because dinner out somewhere, because I'm in a part of the new beginning and I should celebrate that.
That's right, John. We should have something where people can write in about their new beginnings, because we don't have enough cultural rituals around that.
Yes.
And it's so important. It's so key to going through transitional times.
Yeah. I thought a little bit about this, that, that our grads, our new alumni, like, they've spent, I think I can say literally decades, like 2 decades, get in the rhythm of school and like the kind of feedback that you get from that experience. At least 17
straight years.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like, the better part of 20 years, you've been in this loop of school, and there's a particular amount of like consistent feedback that you get on your performance. And then you step into like a workspace or a church space. And a lot of times the only time you get feedback is either at your yearly review or if you've really screwed something up.
It's so true, John. I literally was just talking with my husband about this last night. He's taking an online course with Cornell Extension right now. He's a designer. Okay. And, he's just having so much fun. Like, oh, I just got 100 on my test or something. And I said, that part of why this is so fun is because you're actually you're getting some really great feedback. And, and I said to him, now you know why I loved being a student. It was just like constant feedback. And truth be told, I'm honest about this in the book. Part of my struggle post-college was I didn't know how to get an A in life after college.
Yeah,
there wasn't a clear pathway. And I'm someone who, there's a lot of, you don't want me in your band singing or playing guitar. You don't probably want me on your sports team, but I could make the grade. And I struggled post-college with like, what is an A in decision making? What is an A in relationships? And got myself into a bad place with trying to evaluate my life that way. That's not, I'm a 10 out of 10 in Christ. And that system was not, we don't need to be searching for that. And at the same time, having conversations with other people that help normalize things, I think that can be a positive feedback loop.
Yes, absolutely. And to your point of needing more of these places to celebrate these moments, like that would be some helpful, like sort of grading system or feedback of like, hey, this just happened in my life. I think that I'm entering new beginnings. And for somebody else to see that and say, oh, I just had that happen to me too. Maybe I'm also in new beginnings. Like maybe I'm making some progress here. This is really exciting.
I love that.
Erica, I think maybe we're already kind of leaning in this direction, but I know that there's so much more from your book, but I would love for people to just like pick it up and read the book instead. But is there a final, before you give us one more plug of where we can find the book and everything, is there a final piece of advice or encouragement that you would give to our young alumni who are in the middle of or who are about to step into this first year of life after graduation?
Well, one quick thing, if you're listening and you are a current student and you haven't yet made your post-college decision plans, I would say, think about where's next, as much, if not more so than what's next.
Yeah.
Where we build our adult life has a big impact on even just some of the very themes that we're talking about here. And if we had more time, I could tell you some stories about that. They're in the book. The other thing I will say is if your transition goes more smoothly than you envision, give thanks. If it does not, welcome to the club. You get to join the narrative of many of us for whom there were bumps along the way. And the book is not meant to take out the bumps. It's meant to say, you have some tools now in your tool bag to navigate these with grace. And there's going to be issues similar to premarital counseling, right? You can't take away the challenges and the tension of that first year of marriage. And you can also say, you probably are going to fight about money, or, so that's what I'm doing in the book, is just trying to say these are normal. And I do want to breathe hope into any listener. If you're about to transition or if you're in it already, there is hope for the transition. Yeah. You may have days of feeling despair and challenge, and ultimately it is going to be okay. And I don't say that as a trite phrase to throw at life's deepest pain. I say that as someone who knows that God, the God of the universe, has gone before you. He chases after you with mercy and love, and he has really good things prepared in advance for you to step into, even if the 20s are years of angst and training. There's so much good in store. And we know this because we know ultimately the story is not over. If we identify as believers, we know that the kingdom will fully come. We're in the tension of the now, but not yet, but we know the end of the story. Yeah.
Wow. That's so great. I feel encouraged. I'm not even entering the post-graduation transition, but man, those are words that I can take with me today as well. Thank you, Erica. That's amazing. Can you help us one more time? Tell us the name of the book again, where we can find it, and give us one more directive on jumping into the book.
After College, Navigating Transitions, Relationships, and Faith. And you can buy it wherever you like to buy books. If you want to support a local bookseller, I am a big fan of Byron Borger at Hearts and Minds. So encourage you to support him. You can order directly from the publisher. And you can just also go on the aftercollegetransition.com website, aftercollegetransition.com/book, and you can see all those purchasing options.
That's great. Erica, thanks so much for coming back. Thanks for hanging out with us. This has been so much fun. It's just really nice the times you get to sit down with a kindred spirit and just enjoy talking about stuff that you love talking about. So this has been super helpful. I'm grateful for your book and for all of the time that you have invested in young grads who are making this transition. So thank you so much, Erica.
John, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I hope your listeners can find a friend and read it together. Yes. And I'd love to hear how it's going. Thank you. Thanks so much, John. A joy to be here today.
Alumni, are you familiar with the term embarrassment of riches? It's when you have a ridiculous amount of some kind of resource, so much so that you might feel a little self-conscious about it. Well, in this case, we have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the insightful and compassionate resource that we have in Erica Young Reitz and her book, After College. And it's nothing to actually be embarrassed about. It's something to thank God for, because it's one of the many indicators of his generosity and love for you as you make this transition. Erica and After College have so much to offer you as a tool for transitioning well to life after graduation. Not to remove the bumps in the road, just like Erica said, but to give you the tools you need to navigate that bumpy road with skill and a whole lot of grace. Please, please, please do yourself a favor and purchase your copy of After College today. There's a link in the show notes. Erica, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all the great work you've done and continue to do as you lead the way in helping young grads navigate this significant transition. Alumni, be sure to come back next week as we kick off our new series digging into some of the significant faith transitions and transformations that you can expect as you step into life after graduation. Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Santera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.